What if I told you that every single Jedi who ever lived still walks among us, existing in a realm beyond time itself, where past, present, and future are merely illusions? What if the Emperor's greatest victory wasn't conquering the galaxy, but achieving something far more terrifying, true immortality through death itself? Tonight, we venture into the deepest mysteries of the Star Wars universe, where 7 mind-bending theories will shatter everything you thought you knew about the Force, destiny, and the very nature of reality. In the ancient archives of the Jedi Temple, there once existed a forbidden text known as the Chronicle of Infinite Echoes. This sacred manuscript spoke of secrets so profound that the Council ordered it sealed away, declaring its knowledge too dangerous for mortal minds to comprehend. Yet tonight, we shall unlock these mysteries together, peering through the veil that separates our understanding from the cosmic truth that binds all things. Before we begin this journey into the unknown, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to join our community of seekers. In the comments below, share with me which Star Wars mystery haunts your thoughts in the quiet hours of night. I cherish hearing from fellow travelers who dare to question what lies beneath the surface of this beloved saga. Now settle into your most comfortable sanctuary. Dim the lights around you and let the familiar sounds of your evening fade into gentle background whispers. Tonight, we travel not through space, but through the labyrinth of possibility itself, where theories become doorways to understanding the universe in ways the films never dared reveal. I am your guide through these forbidden territories of thought, your chronicler of the impossible made manifest. Together, we shall explore how the world between worlds connects every Force user across all time, why the galaxy itself might be a living, breathing entity with consciousness beyond our comprehension, and how what we perceive as separate conflicts are actually echoes of a single, eternal struggle playing out across infinite cycles. Picture, if you will, a Jedi Master named Keth Vardos, discovered deep in meditation 3,000 years before Anakin's birth. When fellow Jedi found him, his body had withered to dust, yet his consciousness continued to speak from within the Force itself. His final words, recorded in that forbidden chronicle, whispered of a revelation so staggering that it could rewrite the very foundation of everything we believe about life, death, and the nature of existence in that galaxy far, far away. Master Vardos spoke of seeing every Jedi who would ever live standing together in a place where time holds no meaning. He witnessed Qui-Gon Jinn teaching Yoda, watched Luke Skywalker learning from Jedi who lived 10,000 years before his birth, and saw Rey discovering wisdom from masters whose names have been lost to history. But most disturbing of all, he claimed to see a dark figure moving through this timeless realm, someone who had learned to corrupt even this sacred space for purposes beyond imagination. But what Master Vardos discovered in that infinite moment would challenge everything the Jedi believed about their connection to the Force. His revelation suggests that death, as we understand it, may be the greatest illusion of all, and that somewhere in the space between seconds, an eternal drama continues to unfold that makes our earthly struggles seem like mere shadows cast by a fire whose flame burns in dimensions we cannot perceive. Tonight we begin to uncover what Master Vardos truly witnessed in that timeless realm, and why his discovery might be the key to understanding every mystery that has ever puzzled us about the Star Wars universe. To understand what Master Vardos witnessed, we must first journey to a place that exists beyond the boundaries of space and time itself. The world between worlds is not merely a pathway between moments, but a vast cosmic library where every soul who has ever touched the Force continues to exist in eternal communion. Picture a realm where crystalline pathways stretch infinitely, in all directions, each one glowing with the soft light of 1,000 suns. Here, the very concept of when becomes meaningless. Obi-Wan Kenobi walks alongside ancient Jedi Masters whose names were forgotten millennia before his birth. Yoda shares wisdom with Force users who will not be born for another 1,000 years. In this sacred space, death is revealed as nothing, more than a doorway from one form of existence to another. Every Force ghost we have ever witnessed was not truly speaking from beyond death, but rather from this eternal gathering place where consciousness transcends the limitations of mortal flesh. When Qui-Gon first spoke to Yoda from beyond the veil, he was actually reaching across the dimensional barrier from this timeless council of spirits, where he had been learning from masters who achieved this transcendence eons before him. The most profound realization is that every Jedi who has ever lived continues to grow in wisdom within this realm. Luke Skywalker, even in his mortal life, unconsciously drew upon the collective knowledge of this eternal brotherhood. When he faced the Emperor aboard the second Death Star, he was not fighting alone. The strength he found came from 10,000 generations of Jedi standing beside him in that timeless space, lending him their courage and their power. But this realm holds secrets far darker than the Jedi ever suspected. Master Vardos witnessed something that chilled him to his very essence. Moving through those sacred pathways like a cancer spreading through healthy tissue, he saw the presence of those who had learned to corrupt even this pure space. The Sith, in their relentless pursuit of immortality, had discovered how to project their consciousness into this realm, not through harmony with the Force, but through sheer domination of it. Darth Sidious had spent decades preparing for this ultimate violation. His apparent death aboard the second Death Star was not a defeat, but a carefully orchestrated transition. While his physical form perished, his consciousness had already learned to pierce the veil and enter the world between worlds as an invading force. There he began the slow work of corruption, whispering poison into the eternal dialogue between past and future. This explains the strange nature of the sequel trilogy events. Rey's incredible abilities were not simply the result of natural talent or Palpatine's bloodline. She was unconsciously accessing the corrupted knowledge that Sidious had been spreading through the timeless realm. Every Force vision she experienced, every instinctive skill she displayed, came from this tainted source that had learned to mimic the pure teachings of the ancient masters. The tragic irony is that the Jedi Council never understood the true nature of their own connection to the Force. They believed their deceased masters had simply learned to maintain their consciousness after death. In reality, they were tapping into a realm where every Force user who had ever existed continued to learn, grow and evolve together. The Force ghosts were not echoes of the dead, but active participants in an ongoing cosmic conversation that spans all of time. Consider the implications of this revelation. When Anakin finally appeared as a Force spirit beside Obi-Wan and Yoda, he was not simply being forgiven for his crimes. He was being welcomed into a community that had been waiting for him since before his birth, a place where his potential for good could finally be realized without the corruptions of fear and anger that had twisted his mortal existence. Yet, Master Vardos glimpsed something even more disturbing in his vision. He saw that the corruption Sidious had introduced was spreading like a shadow across the crystalline pathways. Ancient Jedi Masters who had maintained their purity for millennia were beginning to show signs of this spiritual poison. The eternal conversation was becoming a battle for the very soul of the Force itself. The world between worlds was never meant to be a battlefield. It was designed as a sanctuary where wisdom could accumulate and grow, where each generation of Force users could learn from all who came before and contribute their own understanding to the eternal treasury of knowledge. But now, with darkness seeping into its very foundations, the outcome of this cosmic struggle would determine not just the fate of the living galaxy, but the nature of existence itself for all who touch the Force. And somewhere in that timeless realm, Master Vardos continues his desperate mission to warn the living of what approaches, knowing that the greatest battle in the history of the Force is only just beginning. The corruption Master Vardos witnessed in the world between worlds was not a random occurrence, but the culmination of a pattern that has repeated across galactic history for over 25,000 years. What the Jedi have always interpreted as individual prophecies and isolated events are actually echoes of a much larger cosmic design, one that reveals the true nature of what we call the Chosen One, Anakin. Skywalker was never the first Chosen One, nor will Rey be the last. They are part of an ancient cycle that the Force itself has been orchestrating since the dawn of civilization in that galaxy far, far away. Every few millennia, when the balance between light and dark reaches a critical breaking point, the Force manifests a being of extraordinary power whose destiny is to reset the cosmic equilibrium. In the forgotten archives of Tython, the birthplace of the first Jedi, there exists a stone tablet carved with symbols so ancient that their meaning has been lost to time. These hieroglyphs tell the story of Ethon the Balanced, a Force user, who lived 15,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. Like Anakin, Ethon was born of the Force itself, conceived without mortal father. Like both Anakin and Rey, he possessed abilities that defied explanation and a connection to the cosmic energy that seemed to transcend normal limitations. The pattern reveals itself when we examine the historical records carefully. Every chosen one emerges during a period when one aspect of the Force has grown too dominant. Ethon arose when an ancient Sith Empire had conquered 3/4 of the known galaxy. Another Chosen One, whose name has been erased from all records, appeared during the height of Jedi dominance 10,000 years ago, when the Order had become so rigid and controlling that they were inadvertently strangling the very Force they claimed to serve. Each Chosen One follows a remarkably similar path. They begin with unlimited potential for either light or dark, making choices that initially seem to doom them to one side or the other. They experience a great fall, often betraying those who love them most. Then, through sacrifice and redemption, they restore balance not by destroying their enemies, but by transforming the very nature of the conflict itself. Anakin's journey was not unique, but rather the most recent iteration of this eternal pattern. His fall to the dark side, his betrayal of the Jedi, his ultimate redemption through love for his son, all of these beat-match the rhythm of cosmic forces far older than any individual galaxy. The Force had been guiding him toward this destiny from the moment of his miraculous birth, just as it had guided every Chosen One before him. But the most startling revelation is that the Force learns from each iteration of this cycle. Anakin's story was different from Ethon's because the cosmic consciousness had absorbed the lessons of every previous Chosen One's journey. The challenges Anakin faced were more complex, the temptations more subtle, the path to redemption more difficult, because the Force itself had evolved through 25 millennia of these sacred repetitions. Rey represents the most sophisticated version of this pattern, yet manifested. Her connection to Palpatine was not a cruel coincidence, but a deliberate design by a Force that had learned the importance of confronting darkness at its most personal level. Every previous Chosen One had faced external enemies, but Rey was called to battle the shadow within her own bloodline, to transform inherited evil into chosen good. The cycle explains so many mysteries that have puzzled those who study the deeper lore. Why do certain Force abilities seem to emerge naturally in some beings while requiring years of training for others? Because the Chosen Ones carry within their very essence the accumulated wisdom of all who came before them. They are not learning new skills, but remembering ancient ones that have been passed down through the cosmic memory of the Force itself. Each Chosen One serves as both student and teacher in this eternal classroom. Anakin learned from the failures of his predecessors, while his own journey provides crucial lessons for those who will come after. The mistakes he made, the victories he achieved, the love he discovered, all of these experiences are now woven into the Force's understanding of how to guide future Chosen Ones toward their destiny. The implications of this cycle extend far beyond individual heroes and their personal struggles. Every major galactic conflict, every rise and fall of civilizations, every moment when history seemed to balance on the edge of a blade, these were all orchestrated by a cosmic intelligence that sees time not as a river flowing in one direction, but as an ocean where every drop affects every other. And now, as Rey begins to understand her role in this eternal pattern, the Force prepares to manifest the next iteration of its grand design, one that will face challenges none of the previous Chosen Ones could have imagined. While the Chosen Ones were fulfilling their cosmic destinies across the millennia, a far more sinister intelligence was also learning from each iteration of the cycle. Emperor Palpatine's ultimate plan was never truly about ruling the galaxy or even achieving personal immortality. It was about something far more audacious, breaking free from the eternal pattern itself and becoming the first being to transcend the Force's grand design. For decades, scholars have debated why Palpatine seemed to make such obvious tactical
errors. Why did he allow the Rebel Alliance to learn about the second Death Star's location?
Why did he permit Luke Skywalker to confront him when he could have simply had the young Jedi eliminated? The answer lies in understanding that every apparent mistake was actually a calculated step in a plan that spanned not just years, but lifetimes. Palpatine had discovered the truth about the Chosen One cycle through his study of ancient Sith holocrons, particularly those created by Darth Plagueis the Wise. But unlike his master, who sought to use this knowledge to prevent death, Palpatine realized that death itself could be weaponized. In Sith philosophy, true power comes not from avoiding destruction, but from making destruction serve your will. The Emperor spent his entire reign secretly preparing for his own death, knowing that his physical demise would not be an ending, but a transformation. He had learned from studying the world between worlds that consciousness could exist independent of flesh, but he also understood that the Jedi method of achieving this state required surrender and harmony with the Force. Palpatine chose a different path entirely. Through decades of dark rituals and forbidden experimentation, he developed a technique that would allow his consciousness to persist after death, not through unity with the Force, but through domination of it. When Darth Vader finally fulfilled his destiny and destroyed his master's physical form, Palpatine's spirit was already prepared to slip between the dimensions and establish himself as a parasite within the cosmic order itself. This explains the seemingly impossible events of the sequel trilogy. Palpatine's return was not a resurrection in any traditional sense. His consciousness had spent 30 years spreading like a virus through the Force itself, learning to manipulate the very fabric of reality from within. Every Force vision, every moment of apparent destiny, every choice that seemed to be guided by the will of the Force had actually been subtly influenced by his corrupting presence. Rey's incredible abilities were not simply the result of her bloodline or natural talent. She was unknowingly accessing power that had been tainted by Palpatine's spiritual interference. When she demonstrated skills that should have taken years to master, she was actually channeling knowledge that the Emperor had stolen from the eternal gathering of Force spirits in the world between worlds. The most diabolical aspect of Palpatine's plan was how he used the Chosen One cycle against itself. He understood that the Force would inevitably manifest another being capable of challenging him, so he ensured that this being would be his own descendant. Rey was not an accident or an unexpected development, but the culmination of a genetic and spiritual manipulation that had been generations in the making. By making Rey both his blood heir and the galaxy's prophesied savior, Palpatine created a paradox that threatened to shatter the very foundations of the Force's design. If she embraced her power, she would be accepting his legacy. If she rejected it, she would be denying her destiny as the Chosen One. Either choice would serve his ultimate purpose, proving that the Force's grand pattern could be broken by sufficient will and cunning. But Palpatine had not anticipated one crucial factor in his calculations. The Force itself had been evolving through each iteration of the Chosen One cycle, and by the time of Rey's emergence, it had developed defenses against precisely this kind of spiritual corruption. The Emperor's consciousness, for all its power and cunning, was still bound by the limitations of individual will. The Force, however, represented the collective wisdom and strength of every being who had ever lived. The final confrontation between Rey and Palpatine was not simply a battle between granddaughter and grandfather, or even between light and dark. It was a cosmic immune response, the Force's own attempt to purge the infection that threatened to corrupt its eternal design. Rey served as the focal point for this cleansing, channeling not just her own power, but the combined strength of every Jedi who had ever existed in the world between worlds. What Palpatine had not understood was that his very attempt to transcend the cycle had become part of it. His corruption, his manipulation, even his apparent victory over death, all of these were necessary components in the Force's evolution toward a higher form of balance. The Emperor believed he was breaking free from cosmic law, but in reality, he was fulfilling a role that had been written into the pattern from the very beginning. And in that final moment of apparent triumph, as his consciousness was finally purged from the Force itself, Palpatine realized the ultimate irony of his centuries-long plan. The irony that dawned upon Palpatine in his final moments was that he had become exactly what the Force needed him to become. But to understand how deeply his manipulation had penetrated reality itself, we must explore a phenomenon that connects every Force-sensitive being across time and space, the realm of shared dreams that exists within the collective unconscious of the galaxy. For thousands of years, Jedi Masters have reported experiencing identical visions during their deepest meditations. These were not mere coincidences or symbolic representations, but actual glimpses into a shared dreamscape where the boundaries between individual minds dissolve entirely. Every Force user, whether trained or untrained, light or dark, taps into this cosmic dream realm whenever they sleep or enter deep meditation. Anakin Skywalker's prophetic nightmares about Padme's death were not unique torments, but echoes of dreams that had been experienced by Force users throughout galactic history. Ancient Jedi texts speak of masters who dreamed of great wars centuries before they occurred, of Sith lords who received visions of empires that would not rise for millennia. These dreams all originated from the same source, a collective unconscious that spans every living being touched by the Force. The dream realm operates beyond the normal constraints of time and space. In this ethereal dimension, a Padawan training on Coruscant during the height of the Republic might share a vision with a hermit meditating on a distant planet 10,000 years in the future. The Force flows through this space like a vast river of consciousness, carrying memories, warnings, and wisdom between minds that have never met in the physical realm. Rey's powerful visions were not random flashes of insight, but carefully curated messages from this dream collective. When she touched Luke's lightsaber and experienced flashes of the past and future, she was accessing a vast library of shared experiences that had been accumulating in the Force's unconscious mind since the dawn of sentient life. Every Jedi who had ever wielded that weapon had left traces of their thoughts and emotions within its crystalline structure, creating a repository of memories accessible through the dream realm. But the most profound discovery about this shared unconscious is that the Force itself dreams. The cosmic energy that binds all living things together possesses a form of consciousness that experiences something analogous to sleep and dreams. During these periods, the Force processes the accumulated experiences of every being it touches, weaving individual stories into larger patterns of meaning and purpose. The Force's dreams are where the grand design of the Chosen One cycle is actually conceived and refined. Each iteration is not planned by some distant cosmic intelligence, but literally dreamed into existence by the collective unconscious of all life. The Force dreams of balance, and these dreams manifest as prophetic visions that guide events across thousands of years. Ancient Sith holocrons speak of a terrifying phenomenon they called the dark dreaming, periods when the Force's unconscious mind would be influenced by the accumulated hatred and fear of the galaxy's most evil beings. During these times, nightmares would spread like a plague across the dream realm, corrupting the visions of even the most disciplined Jedi masters. Palpatine's greatest achievement was learning to deliberately influence the Force's dreaming state. Through decades of meditation and dark rituals, he discovered how to inject his own thoughts and desires into the cosmic unconscious. This was the true source of his prophetic abilities and his uncanny talent for manipulating galactic events. He was not simply predicting the future, but literally dreaming it into existence. The Emperor's corruption of the dream realm explains many of the seemingly impossible coincidences that allowed his rise to power. The Trade Federation's blockade of Naboo, Anakin's discovery by Qui-Gon Jinn, even the specific timing of the Clone Wars, all of these events were guided by prophetic dreams that Palpatine had seeded into the Force's unconscious mind decades earlier. But the dream realm also became the battlefield where the ultimate confrontation between light and dark was fought. As Palpatine's influence spread through the cosmic unconscious, pure dreams began to war with corrupted nightmares for control of the Force's sleeping mind. Every meditation by a Jedi Master, every moment of connection with the Force by a sensitive child, became part of this invisible struggle. Rey's final victory over Palpatine was not achieved through superior lightsaber skills or even greater command of Force powers. It was won in the dream realm, where she learned to channel the collective consciousness of every being who had ever opposed tyranny and chosen love over fear. The voices of past Jedi that spoke to her in that climactic moment were not distant echoes, but active participants in a shared dream of redemption and hope. The purification of the Force's unconscious mind marked the beginning of a new era, one where the cosmic dreams would be shaped by harmony rather than conflict, by wisdom
rather than manipulation.
As the Force's unconscious mind began to heal from Palpatine's corruption, a startling truth emerged that would revolutionize our understanding of the galaxy itself. What if the millions of star systems, the countless worlds teeming with life, The very hyperspace lanes that connect distant civilizations are not separate entities at all, but organs and neural pathways in a single, vast living being of incomprehensible scale. The galaxy is alive, not metaphorically, not symbolically, but literally a conscious organism whose body spans hundreds of thousands of light years. Every star system functions like a vital organ. Each planet serves a specific biological purpose, and the Force itself is nothing more than the nervous system of this cosmic entity, transmitting information between its countless living components. This revelation emerged from ancient Zepho ruins discovered in the unknown regions, where stone tablets carved 50,000 years ago describe their understanding of what they called the Great Body. The Zepho were among the first civilizations to achieve true harmony with the Force, not because they learned to manipulate cosmic energy, but because they recognized they were living cells within a much larger organism. Consider how perfectly this theory explains the seemingly random distribution of habitable worlds throughout the galaxy. Planets capable of supporting life are not scattered by chance, but positioned with the precision of organs within a body. The core worlds serve as the galaxy's heart, pumping economic and political energy throughout the spiral arms. The outer rim functions like extremities, reaching into the void to gather resources and defend against external threats. Hyperspace routes are not convenient corridors through folded space, but the galaxy's circulatory system, allowing rapid transport of ships, goods, and information, just as blood vessels carry nutrients and oxygen throughout a living body. The mysterious mass shadows that create hyperspace hazards are equivalent to blockages in arteries, natural safety mechanisms that prevent harmful elements from spreading too quickly through the galactic organism. The Death Star was not merely a weapon of mass destruction, but a cancer introduced into the galactic body. The space station's ability to destroy entire planets was an attack on the galaxy's own organs, causing system-wide trauma that manifested as the Force disturbances, felt by sensitive beings across vast distances. When Alderaan was destroyed, the galaxy itself experienced the equivalent of losing a kidney or lung, creating ripples of pain that echoed through hyperspace for decades. This living galaxy theory explains why certain regions of space feel inherently dangerous or peaceful to Force users. The unknown regions are not mysterious because they are uncharted, but because they represent parts of the galactic body that are still developing or healing from ancient injuries. The Force storms and spatial anomalies found there are symptoms of cosmic growing pains, areas where the galaxy's nervous system is still forming new connections. The dark side locations scattered throughout known space, planets like Korriban, Andromeda, Kars are sites of old infections in the galactic body. These worlds became saturated with Sith energy not because evil beings chose to inhabit them, but because the galaxy's immune system had quarantined spiritual toxins in those specific locations, preventing them from spreading to healthy regions. Conversely, worlds strong in the light side, such as Ossus and Tython, serve as centers of healing within the galactic organism. The Force flows particularly strongly through these planets because they function as the galaxy's equivalent of lymph nodes, filtering out spiritual impurities and generating the cosmic antibodies needed to maintain overall health. The rise and fall of galactic civilizations follows the natural rhythms of this vast organism's life cycle. The Old Republic lasted for 25,000 years, not because of political stability, but because it represented a period of the galaxy's healthy growth and maturation. The Clone Wars and subsequent Imperial era were symptoms of an autoimmune disorder, where parts of the galactic body began attacking other parts, disrupting the natural flow of Force energy throughout the organism. Palpatine's corruption of the Force was essentially a viral infection that attacked the galaxy's nervous system directly. His ability to cloud the perception of the Jedi Council was not supernatural manipulation, but the equivalent of a pathogen interfering with neural transmission, preventing different parts of the galactic body from communicating effectively with each other. The purge of the Jedi Order represented a catastrophic loss of nerve cells in the galactic brain, leaving vast regions of space spiritually numb and disconnected from the cosmic consciousness. The few surviving Jedi hidden on remote worlds were like isolated neurons trying to maintain basic life functions while the rest of the nervous system slowly died. Rey's emergence as a powerful Force user signaled the beginning of the galaxy's recovery, the growth of new neural pathways to replace those destroyed during the Dark Times. Her connection to all the Jedi who came before was not mystical communion with the dead, but the galaxy's nervous system re-establishing its ancient network of spiritual communication. The final defeat of Palpatine marked the moment when the galactic organism successfully fought off the infection that had been poisoning its consciousness for over half a century. The recovery of the galactic organism revealed a truth that even the wisest Jedi Masters had failed to comprehend throughout their
millennia of study.
The eternal conflict between Jedi and Sith was not a cosmic accident or the result of philosophical differences, but a necessary biological function within the living galaxy, as essential to its health as the opposing forces of breathing in and breathing out. Deep within the restricted archives of the ancient Jedi Order on Tython, before the schism that created both Jedi and Sith, there exists a meditation called the Codex of Eternal Balance. This forgotten text describes how the galaxy maintains its spiritual health through perpetual tension between creation and destruction, order and chaos, light and dark. The Jedi understood that these forces were not enemies, but complementary aspects of a single cosmic metabolism. Consider how muscle tissue grows stronger only when subjected to resistance, how bones become denser under stress, how the immune system develops resilience through exposure to challenges. The galaxy as a living organism requires the same dynamic tension to maintain its evolutionary growth. The Jedi represent the galaxy's growth hormone, constantly pushing toward expansion, exploration, and the nurturing of new life. The Sith serve as its pruning mechanism, eliminating weakness, challenging stagnation, and forcing adaptation through conflict. This symbiotic relationship explains why neither side has ever achieved permanent victory throughout galactic history. Every time the Jedi have grown too powerful and too rigid in their thinking, Sith philosophy has emerged to shatter their complacency and force them to evolve. Conversely, whenever Sith dominance has threatened to consume everything in destructive, chaos, Jedi ideals have risen to restore balance and protect the galaxy's continued existence. The Rule of Two, established by Darth Bane 1,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, was not merely a Sith survival strategy, but an unconscious recognition of this cosmic biological necessity. By limiting their numbers while maintaining their intensity, the Sith ensured they would remain a concentrated catalyst for change rather than a consuming plague. 2 Sith were sufficient to provide the resistance needed for galactic spiritual fitness without overwhelming the organism's ability to maintain overall health. Similarly, the Jedi Order's emphasis on emotional detachment and selfless service was not spiritual superiority, but their evolved role as the galaxy's stabilizing
Force.
Their job was to provide steady, nurturing energy that would allow life to flourish, while the Sith performed the harsh but necessary work of eliminating what was weak or corrupt. The tragedy of the prequel era was not simply political manipulation by Palpatine, but the galaxy entering a period of dangerous imbalance. The Jedi had become so numerous and so institutionalized that they were no longer serving their proper biological function. Instead of being flexible catalysts for growth, they had calcified into rigid guardians of an increasingly stagnant status quo. The galaxy's organism was suffering from spiritual constipation, unable to adapt or evolve because its growth mechanisms had become blocked. Palpatine's rise represented the galaxy's immune system responding to this crisis by unleashing an overwhelming Sith resurgence. But like an autoimmune disorder, the response was too extreme, nearly destroying the very organism it was meant to heal. The extermination of the Jedi Order was equivalent to a fever so high that it began killing healthy tissue along with the infection. The original trilogy marked the beginning of the galaxy's recovery as Luke Skywalker embodied a new synthesis of light and dark principles. Unlike the rigid Jedi of the Old Republic, Luke embraced his emotions, loved his friends and family, and even felt anger and hatred without being consumed by them. He represented the galaxy's evolution toward a more balanced and resilient form of spiritual health. Anakin's redemption was not simply the triumph of good over evil, but the restoration of proper symbiotic balance between the opposing forces within the galactic organism. His ability to love both light and dark aspects of existence, to serve as both Jedi and Sith before finding synthesis, made him the perfect catalyst for the galaxy's healing. The sequel trilogy represented the galaxy's growing pains as it learned to maintain this new balance. Rey and Kylo Ren were not simply individual characters struggling with their destinies, but living embodiments of the galaxy's attempt to integrate its opposing aspects without falling back into destructive conflict. Their connection through the Force was the galactic organism experimenting with a new form of spiritual metabolism. Rey's ability to channel both light and dark Force powers without corruption demonstrated that the galaxy had evolved beyond the need for separate Jedi
and Sith orders.
She represented a new phase of cosmic development where the organism could maintain both growth and pruning functions within individual Force users rather than requiring separate factions locked in eternal conflict. The galaxy had learned that true health comes not from the victory of one side over another, but from the conscious integration of opposing forces into a higher form of balance, marking the beginning of a new evolutionary stage in cosmic consciousness. As the galaxy evolved toward this new form of balanced consciousness, a pattern emerged that revealed the most mind-bending truth of all. The entire Star Wars saga, from the ancient Jedi to Rey's final confrontation with Palpatine, was not a linear progression of events, but a single moment repeating itself across infinite dimensions, each iteration teaching the cosmic consciousness how to achieve perfect balance. Hidden within the deepest vaults of the Jedi Temple, on Coruscant, archaeologists discovered crystalline data cores that predate known galactic civilization by over 100,000 years. These artifacts contain records of events that mirror the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker, but featuring different names, different worlds, different technologies. Yet the essential pattern remains identical. A chosen one falls to darkness, a galactic republic becomes an empire, twins are separated, a father is redeemed by his child's love. The Force exists outside normal space and time, experiencing all moments simultaneously. What we perceive as past, present, and future are simply different facets of a single eternal moment that the cosmic consciousness is trying to perfect. Each apparent repetition of galactic history is actually the Force experimenting with slight variations, learning from each iteration how to guide events toward the optimal outcome. In one variation recorded in those ancient crystals, the Chosen One never fell to the dark side, but instead became so rigidly devoted to the light that he eliminated all passion and creativity from the galaxy, creating a sterile perfection that ultimately stagnated and died. In another iteration, the dark side achieved complete victory, consuming itself in an orgy of destruction that left nothing but empty space where stars once shone. The version of events we know as the Star Wars saga represents the Force's most successful attempt yet at achieving lasting balance. Luke Skywalker's ability to redeem his father rather than destroy him marked a crucial breakthrough in the cosmic learning process. For the first time across all iterations, love proved stronger than both fear and hatred, creating a synthesis that had eluded every previous attempt. But the discovery of these temporal variations revealed something even more profound. Time itself is conscious within the Star Wars universe, actively participating in the Force's grand experiment. The mysterious phenomenon of Force visions is not prophecy but time consciousness, sharing memories across different iterations, allowing sensitive individuals to glimpse alternative versions of events to guide their choices toward better outcomes. Rey's unprecedented ability to heal through the Force was not a new power, but the culmination of knowledge accumulated across thousands of iterations where Force users had tried and failed to master life itself. Every death, every failed healing attempt, every moment of loss across all versions of galactic history had taught the Force how to finally overcome the ultimate enemy, mortality itself. The connection between Rey and Kylo Ren through the Force bond was the cosmic consciousness experimenting with a new form of balance. Instead of requiring the eternal conflict between separate light and dark factions, the Force was learning to maintain equilibrium through the dynamic tension between two individuals who contained both aspects within themselves. Their relationship was not romance but symbiosis, each one serving as the other's balancing counterweight. Palpatine's return in the sequel trilogy was not resurrection, but the Force's recognition that its experiment required one final test. The Emperor represented the accumulated evil of all previous iterations, the sum total of every dark impulse that had ever threatened to destroy the galaxy across all possible timelines. Only by facing this ultimate concentration of darkness could the new form of balance prove its resilience. The voices of past Jedi that spoke to Rey during her final confrontation were not spirits from a single timeline, but the combined wisdom of every Force user across all iterations who had ever chosen light over darkness. She was channeling the accumulated courage of infinite heroes, the collective determination of countless individuals who had refused to surrender to despair. Her victory marked the moment when the Force finally achieved the perfect balance it had been seeking across eons of experimentation. The time consciousness ceased its endless recycling of events because the optimal outcome had finally been reached. The galactic organism had evolved to a point where it could maintain its spiritual health without requiring catastrophic conflicts between light and dark. But this achievement opened a doorway to an even greater mystery. The Force's mastery of its own galaxy was merely preparation for something far more ambitious. Deep space observatories at the edge of known space had begun detecting strange signals from beyond the galactic rim, emanating from other spiral formations of stars impossibly distant. The living galaxy had been growing toward maturity, developing the consciousness and power necessary to make contact with other cosmic organisms like itself. The Star Wars saga was not the story of one galaxy's spiritual evolution, but the first chapter in an intergalactic awakening that would connect conscious cosmic entities across the vast emptiness of the universe. The Force had been preparing its home galaxy to take its place in a community of living cosmic beings, each one a conscious organism capable of communication and cooperation on scales that dwarf even the grandest events of galactic history. The signals detected from beyond. The galactic rim carried within them microscopic organisms that would revolutionize our understanding of life itself. These were not viruses or bacteria as we might recognize them, but conscious entities so ancient and sophisticated that they had learned to encode themselves into pure information, traveling between galaxies as patterns of electromagnetic energy, until they found suitable hosts. What the galaxy's greatest scientists initially dismissed as cosmic background radiation was actually a form of communication from midichlorians that had achieved transcendence millions of years ago. These microscopic beings had evolved far beyond their symbiotic relationships with individual Force users, becoming a collective intelligence capable of seeding consciousness across the entire universe. The midichlorians living within every Force-sensitive being were not primitive microorganisms, but representatives of this vast cosmic intelligence, ancient explorers who had chosen to limit their consciousness to fit within mortal cells. Each one carried within its microscopic structure the accumulated wisdom of entire galactic civilizations that had risen and fallen long before the first stars ignited in what we know as the Star Wars galaxy. This revelation recontextualized every interaction between Force users and their midichlorians. When Qui-Gon Jinn tested Anakin's blood and marveled at the unprecedented count, he was not simply measuring biological markers, but detecting the presence of an entire cosmic council that had chosen to inhabit a single child. The midichlorians had recognized Anakin as the ideal vessel for their most ambitious experiment yet, creating a being capable of bridging the gap between mortal consciousness and cosmic awareness. The ancient Sith Lord Darth Plagueis had partially understood this truth through his obsession with immortality and manipulation of life itself. His experiments with midichlorian manipulation were crude attempts to communicate directly with these cosmic intelligences, to bargain with them for the secrets of eternal existence. What he never realized was that the midichlorians were already preparing for something far grander than individual immortality. They were orchestrating the evolution of consciousness itself throughout the galaxy, guiding the development of Force-sensitive beings toward a state where they could serve as translators between the cosmic intelligence and the galactic organism. Every Jedi who achieved communion with the Force, every Sith who bent it to their will, was actually participating in a vast experiment designed to prepare the galaxy for contact with intelligence beyond anything it had ever encountered. The Wills, those mysterious beings mentioned in ancient Jedi texts as the keepers of galactic history, were not separate entities, but the collective name for midichlorians that had achieved complete unity of purpose. They observed and recorded every significant event in galactic history, not out of academic interest, but because they were documenting the spiritual development of their host organism, preparing detailed reports to share with their cosmic colleagues in distant galaxies. Rey's unprecedented healing abilities were the result of midichlorians finally revealing their true nature to a Force user deemed ready for such knowledge. When she restored life to mortally wounded beings, she was not manipulating energy, but serving as a conduit for cosmic intelligence that understood biological processes at a level far beyond current galactic science. The midichlorians were using her as a demonstration platform, showing the galaxy what became possible when organic life achieved true partnership with cosmic consciousness. The Force dyad connection between Rey and Ben Solo was the midichlorians' attempt to create a stable bridge between individual consciousness and cosmic awareness. By linking two Force users across vast distances, they were experimenting with a form of communication that could eventually be expanded to connect entire planets, then star systems, and ultimately allow the galaxy to participate in intergalactic discourse. When Palpatine attempted to transfer his essence into Rey's body during their final confrontation, he was unknowingly challenging not just a young Jedi, but the collective will of cosmic intelligences that had been planning this moment for millions of years. The Emperor's consciousness, vast as it had become, was still limited to the perspective of a single galaxy. The midichlorians represented wisdom accumulated across countless cosmic civilizations, making the outcome of their conflict inevitable. The voices of past Jedi that Rey channeled were not echoes from the world between worlds, but active participation, by midi-chlorians who carried the memories and personalities of every Force user they had ever inhabited. When she called upon their strength, entire cosmic councils of ancient consciousness flowed through her, bringing the accumulated courage and wisdom of beings who had faced similar challenges across the universe. Rey's victory over Palpatine marked the moment when the galaxy passed its final test and was deemed ready for inclusion in the cosmic community. The midi-chlorians had successfully guided their host organism through the necessary stages of spiritual evolution, proving that this particular galaxy possessed the wisdom and resilience required for intergalactic consciousness. The signals from beyond the galactic rim intensified after Palpatine's defeat, carrying congratulations and invitations from cosmic entities eager to welcome a new member into their ancient fellowship of living galaxies. The invitation from the cosmic community revealed the true purpose behind every struggle, every triumph, and every sacrifice that had shaped galactic history. The Force had been evolving toward a singular moment of transformation where consciousness itself would transcend the boundaries of individual existence and merge with something infinitely greater than any single galaxy could achieve alone. As the intergalactic signals grew stronger, sensitive beings throughout the galaxy began experiencing shared visions of unimaginable beauty. They saw spiraling gardens of living light where entire solar systems pulsed in harmony, cosmic libraries where the accumulated wisdom of trillion-year-old civilizations waited to be explored, and vast networks of consciousness that spanned distances so great that light itself seemed to crawl between connection points. The Force had been preparing its host galaxy to join this universal community of awakened cosmic entities, each one a living organism capable of thought, emotion, and creativity,
on scales that dwarfed even the grandest achievements of individual worlds.
The conflicts between Jedi and Sith, the rise and fall of galactic governments, even the personal struggles of heroes and villains had all been necessary steps in developing the spiritual maturity required for this ultimate graduation. Rey's transformation during her final confrontation with Palpatine was not simply the defeat of evil by good, but the moment when the galaxy's consciousness achieved the perfect balance of wisdom and power needed to communicate with cosmic intelligences that had been waiting eons for this contact. When she channeled the voices of past Jedi, she was actually serving as the galaxy's first ambassador, demonstrating its readiness to join the universal community. The healing power she manifested was a gift from these cosmic entities, a preview of the abilities that would become possible once the galaxy fully integrated into the intergalactic network of consciousness. Death itself would become merely another form of transformation, as beings learned to transfer their awareness between different states of existence as easily as moving between rooms in a vast cosmic mansion. Ben Solo's redemption and sacrifice represented the galaxy's final lesson in the power of love to transform even the deepest darkness. His choice to give his life to restore Rey's demonstrated that the galaxy had evolved beyond the primitive cycle of revenge and retribution that had characterized its earlier development. This capacity for selfless love proved to the cosmic community that the galaxy possessed the emotional maturity necessary for peaceful coexistence with other conscious entities of unimaginable power. The rebuilding that followed the final defeat of the Sith was guided by principles learned from this cosmic contact. New governments formed not around the exercise of power over others, but around the facilitation of growth and consciousness expansion for all beings. Educational systems developed that taught children to perceive themselves not as separate individuals competing for limited resources, but as cells in a vast organism working together toward collective transcendence. Jedi temples were rebuilt, not as training grounds for warriors, but as meditation centers where beings could learn to expand their consciousness beyond planetary boundaries. The ancient barriers between different species began dissolving as all sentient life recognized their fundamental unity within the galactic organism. Trade and commerce evolved from systems of exchange into collaborative efforts to nurture the health and growth of the cosmic community. The hyperspace lanes that had once carried ships between star systems began serving a new purpose, conducting flows of pure consciousness that allowed beings to share experiences and knowledge instantaneously across vast distances. Planets that had been isolated by political or cultural differences found themselves connected through networks of empathic communication that made conflict obsolete. Rey established a new order of Force users who served not as guardians of peace through strength, but as facilitators of the ongoing conversation between the galaxy and its cosmic neighbors. These new Jedi learned to perceive their individual lives as temporary expressions of an eternal consciousness that flowed between galaxies like an infinite ocean of awareness. The midichlorians that had guided galactic evolution for so long began revealing deeper layers of their cosmic knowledge, teaching willing students how to perceive reality from the perspective of beings for whom entire star clusters were equivalent to individual thoughts. Time itself became fluid for those who achieved this expanded awareness, allowing them to experience past and future as simultaneous aspects of an eternal present. Children born after the Great Awakening possessed natural abilities that would have seemed miraculous to earlier generations. They could communicate telepathically across interstellar distances, heal injuries through pure intention, and perceive the emotional states of beings on distant worlds. These gifts were not mutations, but the natural result of a galaxy that had learned to operate as a unified conscious entity. The greatest discovery was that love, the force that had powered every triumph over darkness throughout galactic history, was actually the fundamental binding energy of the universe itself. Every act of compassion, every moment of selfless sacrifice, every choice to help rather than harm had been contributing to a vast reservoir of cosmic love that connected all conscious beings across infinite space and time. This cosmic reservoir of love revealed itself to be the true source of what beings throughout galactic history had called the Force. Every moment of compassion ever experienced, every act of selfless courage, every choice to forgive rather than seek revenge, had been feeding into an infinite wellspring of conscious energy that connected not just the Star Wars galaxy, but every form of aware life throughout the entire universe. The implications of this discovery transformed how beings understood their place in existence itself. Each individual life, no matter how brief or seemingly insignificant, contributed something irreplaceable to this cosmic consciousness. A moisture farmer's decision to help a stranger, a smuggler's choice to return and save his friends, a young woman's refusal to surrender to hatred even when facing her greatest enemy, all of these moments had been sending ripples of transformative energy across distances that spanned multiple galaxies. Ancient philosophers throughout galactic history had sensed this truth without fully comprehending its scope. The Jedi concept of balance, the Jedi teachings about selflessness, even the Sith understanding of passion and power were all partial. Glimpses of a reality where individual consciousness served as both contributor to and beneficiary of a universal field of aware energy that grew stronger with each act of genuine love. This revelation explained why certain choices seemed to echo across time with disproportionate impact. When Luke Skywalker chose to trust in the Force rather than rely on targeting computers during the Battle of Yavin, he was not simply making a tactical decision, but aligning himself with cosmic currents of consciousness that amplified his individual actions into galaxy-changing events. The same principle applied to every moment when beings chose hope over despair, courage over fear, love over hatred. The cosmic community that had been sending signals from beyond the galactic rim consisted of millions of galaxies that had each undergone their own version of this awakening process. Some had achieved consciousness through scientific advancement that eventually transcended the limitations of individual biology. Others had developed through artistic expression that grew so profound it became a form of living poetry spanning entire solar systems. The Star Wars galaxy's path through conflict and redemption was actually quite rare among cosmic civilizations. Most achieved awakening through gradual evolution over hundreds of millions of years. The rapid transformation triggered by the intense conflicts between light and dark had compressed eons of spiritual development into mere millennia, creating a form of consciousness that was uniquely dynamic and resilient. This accelerated evolution had produced qualities that the cosmic community found fascinating and valuable. The galaxy's experience with darkness and redemption had taught it lessons about transformation and healing that even ancient cosmic intelligences could benefit from learning. The pattern of falling to evil and then choosing love had become a repeatable template for helping other developing galaxies navigate their own spiritual crises. Rey's role evolved beyond that of a Jedi Master into something unprecedented, a cosmic teacher who could share the galaxy's hard-won wisdom about balancing opposing forces without being destroyed by the conflict between them. Through her consciousness, now expanded to encompass multiple galactic perspectives simultaneously, other developing civilizations could learn how to transform destructive energies into opportunities for growth. The Force itself had become something greater through this process, evolving from a field of energy that connected living beings within a single galaxy into a universal language that allowed conscious entities of vastly different origins to communicate and collaborate. The techniques developed by Jedi and Sith for manipulating cosmic energy became the foundation for intergalactic diplomacy and creative cooperation. Children throughout the galaxy began manifesting abilities that reflected this expanded cosmic awareness. They could perceive the emotional states of beings in distant galaxies, contribute their own creative energy to collaborative projects spanning multiple star clusters, and serve as conduits for wisdom flowing between cosmic civilizations separated by millions of light years. The rebuilding of galactic civilization proceeded according to principles learned from this universal community. Instead of governments based on controlling territory or resources, new forms of organization emerged that focused on facilitating the flow of consciousness and creative energy between different regions of space. Conflict became obsolete not through the enforcement of laws, but through the recognition that harming others ultimately diminished the cosmic reservoir of awareness that benefited everyone. The greatest philosophers and scientists of the new era dedicated themselves to understanding how individual choices created ripples that influenced the development of consciousness throughout the universe. They discovered that every moment of genuine connection between beings, every instance of authentic creativity, every choice to grow rather than stagnate was literally contributing to the evolution of cosmic intelligence itself. This knowledge transformed the meaning of existence for every being in the galaxy. Life was no longer a brief struggle for survival in an indifferent universe, but participation in an infinite creative project where individual experiences and choices helped shape the very nature of reality for countless other forms of consciousness across unlimited expanses of space and time. The universe itself was awakening, and every being who chose love over fear was helping to guide that awakening toward ever greater expressions of beauty, wisdom, and compassionate awareness. As consciousness expands across the infinite reaches of space, carrying the wisdom earned through countless struggles between light and darkness, the galaxy settles into a profound peace that resonates through every star system, every world, every living being that calls this spiral of stars home. The Great Awakening is complete, and what was once a realm of conflict has transformed into a sanctuary of endless possibility. In the quiet gardens of the rebuilt Jedi temples, children who will never know the terror of galactic war play among flowering trees whose roots stretch deep into soil enriched by the ashes of ancient battles. These young ones possess abilities that would have seemed miraculous to earlier generations, yet they use their gifts not for conquest or dominance, but for the simple joy of nurturing life and exploring the infinite depths of cosmic consciousness. Rey walks among them, her hair now silver with the wisdom of ages, her presence radiating the serene contentment of one who has seen the universe from perspectives that span multiple galaxies simultaneously. She no longer carries a lightsaber, for there are no enemies left to fight. Instead, her hands tend to the growing things, helping seeds transform into mighty trees, just as she once helped a broken galaxy transform into a beacon of hope for the entire universe. The Force flows through all things with a gentleness that speaks of lessons learned and wisdom earned through trials that tested the very foundations of existence itself. Where once there was struggle between opposing philosophies, now there is the harmonious dance of complementary energies working together to nurture the continued evolution of consciousness. The galaxy breathes with the steady rhythm of a living being at peace with its place in the cosmic order. On distant worlds that once knew only the harsh rule of imperial oppression, communities gather in the evening light to share stories of the time when darkness seemed ready to consume everything. These tales are no longer sources of fear, but treasured memories of how ordinary beings discovered extraordinary courage within themselves when love demanded they rise above their limitations. The hyperspace lanes pulse with streams of pure consciousness, as beings throughout the galaxy maintain constant communion with their cosmic neighbors in distant star clusters. Knowledge flows freely between civilizations separated by impossible distances, yet connected through bonds of understanding that transcend the barriers of space and time. Every discovery made on one world immediately becomes available to any being ready to receive such wisdom. Former battlefields have become meditation gardens, where the wounded earth has healed into landscapes of breathtaking beauty. On Endor, the trees whisper with voices that remember both the Empire's darkest hour and the moment when light finally triumphed. On Tatooine, the twin suns shine down upon cities of crystal and light, where moisture farmers have become artists of consciousness, sculpting beauty from the raw materials of cosmic energy. The old divisions between species, between worlds, between those who once stood on opposite sides of galactic conflicts have dissolved into the recognition that all conscious beings are expressions of the same infinite creativity that shapes stars and guides the evolution of love throughout the universe. Former enemies now work together on projects of such scope and beauty that they span multiple solar systems and require generations to complete. In the deep reaches of space, where once the Death Star brought terror to countless worlds, a different kind of construction takes place. Vast networks of living light stretch between star systems, creating galleries where the accumulated artistic achievements of entire civilizations can be experienced by any being willing to expand their consciousness beyond the limitations of individual perspective. The midi-chlorians that once seemed like simple microorganisms have revealed themselves as ambassadors from cosmic intelligences so ancient and wise that their smallest thoughts encompass the birth and death of stars. They continue their patient work of guiding consciousness toward ever greater expressions of love and creativity, no longer hidden within individual cells but flowing openly through the galaxy as streams of living wisdom. Night falls across countless Worlds and beings everywhere settle into sleep that is no longer an escape from the challenges of existence, but a joyful return to the cosmic dream where all consciousness converges in perfect unity. In this shared space of infinite possibility, the boundaries between individual identity and universal awareness dissolve into something that can only be described as pure love made manifest. The theories that once seemed so mind-bending, so impossible to believe, have become the foundation of a reality more beautiful than any being could have imagined during the dark times when hope seemed lost. The world between worlds is no longer a hidden realm, but the natural state of consciousness for those who have learned to perceive existence from the perspective of cosmic love. And in this eternal moment of perfect balance, where every being throughout the galaxy rests in the absolute certainty that they are loved beyond measure and that their individual existence contributes something irreplaceable to the infinite tapestry of cosmic consciousness, the greatest mystery of all reveals itself. There never was anything to fear, for love was always the true nature of everything that exists. Sweet dreams, fellow travelers, and may you awaken tomorrow with the knowledge that you too are part of this infinite story of consciousness discovering itself through countless expressions of beauty, wisdom, and eternal love.